morning.
I'm going to introduce our guest speaker, Shodo Spring. She started her practice here with Katagiri Roshi and went to San Francisco for a while to practice there. Came back. She was ordained and received Dharma transmission from Shahako Okamura Roshi, and now leads the Mountains and Waters Sangha in Rice County, about an hour, maybe?
About an hour from here.
Welcome, I'm so happy.
Hey, thank you. Oh, is there a chant? No chant. Okay. So, good morning.
Good morning.
It's great to be here.
Can you turn the switch on your microphone?
I thought it was on.
It is on. You're right.
So, is there something else going on? My,
Check on it.
what?
He's going to check on it.
Okay, my throat's a little scratchy. It's been this way for a while now, and I haven't solved it or understood it or anything. So I think I'll just go ahead and talk. So every now... Okay, good morning. Every now and then I'm working on something, trying to understand something. And sometimes in those times it happens that I have to give a talk. And so the talk becomes the means of trying to understand this thing. And thus, like I was still working on the talk this morning, and thus I have a whole stack of books here. Do not be scared. I thought I would start by remembering the name of this place. So Okamura Roshi titled his book Living by Vow. Katagiri Roshi called this place Ganshoji, living by vow, also cultivating the clouds, which we never used, or living in vow. And I thought living by vow has a little push to it. It's like the vow enables us to live. So I'm going to start with that, and then I have some stories that come from other places, and then I'll come back. Yesterday, as I'm working on this, well, I was listening to an interview with Zora Mandani, and I just had to shut it off in order to start writing and to working on this. And what I learned, I mean, he's been very popular. He seems to be making a difference. And one of the things mentioned was that he's getting death threats. And his family gets death threats. And the interviewer asked him, has he made peace with it? And he says, well, not really. And then he said, you know, I signed up for this. He chose to have a public life. His family didn't choose this, but they have to put up with it. That got me thinking. In the past week, stories of several people who have made a certain choice have shown up, and I will mention them. But first I'll mention this book that I'm reading. Rutger Bregman. Anybody know this name? A few. He's a Danish historian for some reason, moved to the US. He wrote this lovely book called Humankind, in which he told all kinds of stories and did investigations to show that people are nicer than we think they are. We're not really all about greed, hate, and delusion. And he said, then he looked at the results of this book and he went, oh no, people are just thinking they can lie back and things will be okay. And so the book Moral Ambition, and there, first I saw the YouTube, and then I'm only just started on the book, but he investigates what makes the difference between people who actually change the course of history and people who just watch it go by. And I've collected some of these. But first I'll say he asked the question, how do people become the people? You know, how do you become Greta Thunberg? How do you become Zora Mandani? How do you become Martin Luther King? How do you become? And it seemed to him that there were a few characteristics. I mean, people have done studies, of course. And in this age, we tend to think of big forces make things happen, individuals not so much. But he noticed there were two personal characteristics that mattered, and one of them was growing up with some sense of self-confidence. And the other one was that people who did these wild things were often people who were a little on the edge. Some of them were Christian extremists. Some of them were, I forget the other end, you know, bums. But there was a study that asked what made people act with courage in this way, and what they found, all the personal characteristics you could think of did not have a significant impact. Being an introvert or an extrovert, being highly intelligent or not. I mean, there were 2 pages of characteristics that didn't matter when it came to this question, who does what's needed? So I have a couple of stories. I don't have Mandani's answer. There was a woman named Joan Trumpauer in the civil rights era, and she's been remembered for some reason, showing up on Facebook as it goes. When she was 10 years old, a friend of hers literally went across the tracks into the black neighborhood, and she was really impressed by what she saw, including the fact that the kids who lived there looked at her as if she was better than them. And she came from a very religious family, and she said, this is not okay. Eventually, she dropped out of college. She became one of the Freedom Riders, was often beat up and imprisoned during her late teens, I think. If people, some of you will remember the mixed race group that sat in at a lunch counter in Woolworths while people yelled at them, called them names, dumped things on them, abused them. She was one of those. And there's a picture of her being in prison, you know, mugshots, I guess they call them. After that, after prison, she said, well, people are getting in trouble, black people, for going to white colleges. What if a white person went to a black college? And she did. And she became friends with people who were leaders in the civil rights movement. And she never stopped. And what did she say? She said, "What else could I have done?" She also said, once you take a stand, there's no turning back. Miep Gies, I probably am not pronouncing this right. She's the woman who hosted Anne Frank, her family, and several other people, hiding them from the Nazis. And she survived. She managed not to be hauled off when the Nazis came and took the family. And she said, "I did what any decent person would have done." There's somebody else said, "I'm not special. I did," that was Miep Gies. "I did what any decent person would have done." Somehow all my examples are from Nazi Germany, but I found a few others. Martin Luther King at age 27 didn't want anything to do with that. And then he was asked, and then he went ahead. And he got what most people get. He got shot. Okay, Arnold Dowis. This is like one of the talks is titled "They Arrested, they have the wrong hero." So Arnold was from Germany, I think, and he never did anything right. He was getting thrown out of school. He took off to America, kind of bummed around, and was sent back as an undesirable immigrant. He had the right skin color, but he was still undesirable. And then he was just kind of hanging around, and then the Nazis started acting, and he joined the resistance. He rode his bicycle, he delivered messages, and there's a small town that hid 100 Jews, and none of them were killed. And it's interesting, I mean, nothing to recommend this guy, in his 30s, I think. And he would go to people and say, wouldn't you like to hide some Jews? And they would be looking at him like, huh? And the story that's in the book is when he actually, he and another guy worked together. And they're going, well, think about it. And he says, they're really very nice people. And then he gets the Jewish couple to walk into the living room, and they're all looking at each other. And then he goes, well, that's settled then. And he walked out. And his theory was that if everyone in the village was hiding somebody, nobody would turn them in, because he was particularly hard on ministers. He would shame them. He was not very nice, and he saved 100 people. Okay. So Rutger is asking the question of how do people become like that? And he said, at the top of the list is someone asked them. There are a few people who will just see what's going on and go, okay, I have to do something about this. And then they do one thing, and then they do another thing. There are more people, when somebody says, will you come to this protest with me? They'll go, oh, okay. And our movies are full of people like that. There was, come on, Born on the 4th of July, I think that's the title of a movie, of a guy who got hurt in Vietnam, and his girlfriend took him to afterwards, his girlfriend took him to a protest, and he wasn't like that at all. And, you know, his eyes were open and he jumped in. Okay, so somebody has to ask them. Now, so one of the things that puzzles me is when I watch the news and I see X happens. For instance, Donald Trump, I apologize for saying his name, but what else? He decides to build something and all these people build it. He decides to break something and all these people break it. Why do they go along? Why do people go along? We have Tim Snyder, do not obey in advance. And he studied Nazi Germany and a lot of other places. And he made a list. Most of the power of authoritarianism is freely given. Individuals think ahead about what a more repressive government will want, then offer themselves without being asked. So, I don't think we're in Nazi Germany now, but we're getting closer every minute. And so the question of what we actually do matters. When I was in Bloomington, the things that I was paying attention to were environmental issues. And we were sitting, every month we sat 5 days in retreat. This did not leave a lot of time for anything else. And the only way I could get through it was to make my training and practice the priority. And anything else I did had to be in my free time. I watched a lot of young people who were activists being more monastic than we were. They were living on nothing, they were taking chances with their lives. And I respected that. And so I would talk with Okumura Roshi occasionally about this, because I was doing something that was not standard. And I had an inkling, and I said, oh, just not being out there in that is a kind of resistance. And he was like, yeah. Like by being in the Zendo, facing the wall for 14 hours, yes. And not participating in consumerism, capitalism, just getting by, making this the first thing to do. That in itself is resistance. And I'm thinking of stories of people. Now, let's pick Chogyam Trungpa, who did some good things and some bad things. But when he was 16, escaping, Tibet, with hundreds of people with him, it's like, this is mind-boggling to me. But they would be on the road, and he would stop and go into retreat for 3 months, and they would all wait. My friend Beth, who works in Cambodia with AIDS and TB patients, she's always going on retreat. And I'm like, don't we have to do something else? I mean, isn't there something needed? You know, I have for years wanted to do one of those 3-year retreats. And I went, all right, you don't get to do that. And then somebody was having one again, and I looked at it, and I went, and I said, okay, I'm not doing that. But some people are doing that. And doing that both the people who just do that and the people who alternate that with, families, jobs, environmental work, all the different things that we might call activism. That practice supports everything. That practice it's our foundation. So, let's see. I tried to find something by Dogen that related to this, but Dogen really is just talking about sitting and telling people not to get involved in politics. And he lived in a time of political turmoil, and people would come and hide out in the monasteries. And so he had to say, don't talk about politics. He said people also came to the monastery because there would be food. So Zuimanki is full of his recommendations for those people who might be there for all kinds of reasons. Do not worry about food and clothing. Just maintain the Buddha's precepts and do not engage in worldly affairs. Do not forget the swiftness of impermanence, nor be disturbed vainly by worldly affairs. And then, in this country today, many people are concerned with personal fame and reputation, good, bad, right, wrong, and consider if they do one thing, others will think well of them, or if they do something else, others will think poorly of them. They even worry about the future. This is entirely wrong. Let people think whatever they may think. Let them even call you crazy. On the other hand, it is wrong to shamelessly indulge yourself and do evil things, trying to excuse yourself on the grounds that it does not matter if others think ill of you. And actually, so I've chosen to wear a shaved head, which, if I wear this, people sometimes actually think I'm a Buddhist nun or teacher or monk or what have you. And that's sometimes why I do it. But that means that wherever I go, I'm representing us. And so I do think about how people will react. I think about my words and try to avoid harsh speech. And I know people who are much better at this than I am. But I'm improving. Okay. So Thich Nhat Hanh is our best known Buddhist person, certainly not the only one, who lived in a time of great repression and much death. And so I thought I would read some of his things. And I'm giving it maybe 10 minutes because I want us to be able to have some conversation. Yesterday, I stood in a park and watched a 3-year-old child with all my attention, and I was heartbroken. When people say things aren't too bad, I'm not sure they understand. If we continue to live the way we do, what kind of world are we leaving for our children? Are we leaving any world at all? So 20 years ago, he says, he wrote, if you want peace, peace is with you immediately. A few years later, I had the chance to practice these words. It was 1976, and several of us were conducting an operation to rescue boat people in the Gulf of Siam. The project was called When Blood is Shed, We All Suffer. So people were trying to escape Vietnam by getting into small boats. And the nearby governments would not allow them to land. They would push the boat people out to sea, and they would drown. They hired 2 large ships to pick up refugees on the open sea, and 2 small ships to communicate between the larger ships and the, excuse me, they were going to bring refugees to Australia and Guam, inform the press, and they wouldn't be sent back. They had to do this in secret. And then he talked to a reporter at some point, and the government found out. So lots of stories about how they did this. And the French embassy helped them. Okay. The government of Singapore discovered us, and they had these 2 boats that were going to go to Australia. Reporters tracked us down and published a story without thinking about the consequences. And the Singapore authorities sent police at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they ordered him to leave the country within 24 hours. And he knew that I think 800 people were waiting to escape. The police said, "We'll return your travel documents at the airport tomorrow." What could we do? There was nothing they could do all night, and they practiced walking meditation. And then all these logistic things. And he practiced this phrase, "If you want peace, peace is with you immediately." And he was calm, and then he had a bright idea, and the French embassy, he called the French embassy, and they got him a few more days so he could take care of getting the people onto the boats. And as long as I live, I will never forget those seconds of sitting meditation. So, and they wound up in refugee camps, which was painful, and they just eventually, the boat people became known and had more places to go. Now, what I don't have in this book is why he started. He was a student of the monk who was self-immolated to bring attention to the suffering in Vietnam. And then a lot of other monks and nuns and other people did that too. They set themselves on fire. And last year, a young man, Aaron, I forget his last name, set himself on fire. Aaron Bushnell set himself on fire and filmed it so it couldn't be hidden because he was being sent to deploy in Gaza, and he refused to participate in genocide. What makes people do such a thing? What makes people step across the line and do the thing instead of, like, you can use meditation to calm down, and tolerate things that are intolerable. And Buddhism has been in that position these days. Bhikkhu Bodhi said once he would go to sanghas and talk about activism, and the students would come and say, finally, somebody's talking about this. So my role has become to be the person who talks about it. My books are about it. And it never feels like enough because I'm not being that person. You know, I know you get extra points if you're old and you go and they beat you up. You know, I'm aware of that. I have not done it. And so I'm thinking about this. Oh, and then Bregman. While I was eating breakfast, I watched a little clip of him talking to Jon Stewart, and he says, so I've been in the pundit business. He writes great books, deep understanding, really helpful. And he said, in this study, looking at people who did amazing things, I have envy. I think he's tired of the pundit business. And I thought, oh, I've been trying to get into the pundit business. Oh, dear. And so that's kind of my last input. And it's like I can't say anything about it. But what I can do is ask you to think, and perhaps people want to share what they thought. And I thought of two questions. One question is, who do you know or know of that takes risks like that? Who do you know who has turned their life so it's totally bodhisattva, you know, totally given? So think for a moment. Any thoughts? Okay, too soon. What? Oh, yes.
There's a city council person, I don't know them directly, but a friend of a friend. Yeah,
Oops.
there's a city council person in Minneapolis.
Okay,
I don't
city
know-
council
I
person.
don't know them directly.
Uh-huh.
His name is Soren, but he was shot with a rubber bullet during the George Floyd protest and lost his eye.
Ooh.
Continues to, be active in, I guess, trying to make Minneapolis better.
Okay, I have
Yeah,
to
I
say
don't
that
know.
again for that. So
Yeah.
he was, during a George Floyd
During the George
protest,
Floyd
he was
protest.
shot with a rubber bullet and he
Yes.
lost his
Lost
eye.
his eye, yes.
He lost an
An
eye.
eye, yeah.
And he
he's
keeps
a
going.
young person, and he continues to be on the city council now. I don't have any thoughts on all of his, what all he's brought about or whatever, but I just think about that as somebody who's, like, I think about losing my own eye,
Oh.
and I'm very, I cling very tightly to my health, and the thought of losing my eye and then not having that deter me from continuing the work is, I think that's commendable.
So, yeah, more than that, I think. Okay, so just briefly, so this person lost his eye and continues to work. And when you think about losing an eye yourself, it's scary. Yeah, me too. I'm thinking about, what is it, Sophia Lewinsky, who was at Standing Rock, and she was just carrying water to the people on the front line, and they shot her, and she survived. She just lost her arm. And it probably hadn't occurred to her just like it didn't occur to Rachel Corrie that the cops would actually kill her. So, yeah, so that fear comes up, and there's this question, what does it? What do we bring to that? And so Thich Nhat Hanh told us one thing, because he was already committed, and he had seen lots of people die, including his own friends and his own students. I don't know his beginning, except, the young woman Joan, who I talked about, she had a very strong religious education, and Thich Nhat Hanh had a very strong religious practice and values, and a sense of how things ought to be, and a sense of how we're connected with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a very good friend who, he has a lot of natural ability. He could be earning a lot of money somewhere.
Okay.
And instead of doing that, he makes a pittance and he spends his time working. This guy is an atheist, but he spends his job is working with an imam in the Cedar Riverside area, Somali imam, and they have an organization where they help Somali people interface with community institutions, and they work with like hospitals and police to help them serve the Somali community. He's so integrated into the Somali community, even though he is not Muslim. But he's so integrated into that community. When you walk down Cedar Riverside, and walk in that neighborhood with him, everybody stops and says hi, and he touches his heart, and he's just a part of that whole cultural milieu there.
Thank you. So, for the recording or for whoever's listening out there, a person that you actually know who, instead of working a high-paid job that he would be able to do, spends his time on Cedar Riverside in support of Somali people, and what am I missing? And that everybody knows him, he's become part of that
In the
community.
Cedar Riverside, he's very well known, absolutely.
Thanks. Oh, okay, you and then you.
Hi, thank you for your talk, it was great. I would say that we saw a lot of people step up and let their fear get in the back during Metro Surge. The people who continue to observe, the people who continue to show up, the people who took groceries, the people who gave people rides, all of those people understood that they could not go home to their family that night, that they could very well be shot. They could very well be kidnapped. They could very well, lose a lot of personal stuff, and they continued to step up. And I think that's what part of the reason that the whole world was so taken by the reaction here in the Twin Cities to what was happening, because we saw a huge amount of people being willing to do that. And I'm very proud of living in a place where so many people are willing to do that.
Thank you. I wish I could hand you the microphone. Metro Surge and the many, many people who stood up, protected people, took risks, knowing that at any moment they could be in prison, they could be hauled off, they could be dead. And some of them are dead. You never know who it will be. And when you step out there, you're taking that chance. I know every time I see announcements, come to the Whipple building, I go, oh, okay. Well, once upon a time I tried to go, I couldn't find it, I didn't know where to park. I'm sure I could find these things out, but then there's the 3 hours in the car. I've been involved in local stuff. But It feels, yeah, that's like, but why do I feel like it's not enough? It's because there's something about risking your life, I think, that changes the whole energy of everything. So thank you for bringing up those huge numbers of people. Yeah.
So, my son, 19-year-old son, is one of those individuals that was very, very active in Operation Surge. Probably took some risks that he shouldn't have taken, from the point of view of a father, for sure.
Okay, so I can't even hear you. I know that your son is very involved.
So my 19-year-old son was
Yeah.
one of those individuals that was quite active during
Yes.
Operation Surge and took some risks
He took some risks. Your son,
that
oh
a
my
father
gosh.
would not want him to take.
Ah,
The reason for the comment is you mentioned bodhisattvas.
yeah.
And
Bodhisattvas.
when I think about what motivates my son, 19-year-old boy, is he motivated because he's compassionate towards those that have been offended? Or is he motivated out of anger towards those that have done the offending? And the distinction there is quite important. And as a father, I'm very proud of what he's trying to do, but I hope he can see the distinction of those two things. Because he will, I think what will define his life, frankly, is bumping into both of those realities. And my deepest hope for him is to establish wisdom at that intersection, so he can do great work for the world, but also maybe liberate himself a little bit from the own suffering of anger. Just a lot of that I saw, not just in my son, I see it in a lot of young people, well-intended, but for them, hopefully, understanding, are they driven by compassion for those that are offended, or driven by anger towards those that do offend?
Thank you. So I'm wishing for that second microphone. So your own son, 19 years old, and as a father, you're worried about the risk. And as a father, you're proud of him for acting in this way if it's out of compassion, and you worry about acting out of anger. And your thought, your wish for him is that he learn to work with the intersection of those two things. And I will say, I have a flash of anger many times whenever I encounter the news, basically. And then I have violent fantasies, and then I think, yeah, what would happen if you acted those out? And I think there must be a lot of sane people in this country who are not acting out the violent fantasies that they're having. And yet there's something we need to do, and we're looking for it. But when I think about all the people, I have friends or ex-friends who don't trust me because I support nonviolence. And I don't tell them what they should do, but they still, so they yell at me on Facebook, and sometimes I unfriend them, and sometimes I've kept one. But there is that, the knowledge of cause and effect is one of the essential pieces of the Buddha way. And it's totally different from questions of sin or evil and good that the Christian teaching offers. It has some great things in it, but that we understand that every action we take has an effect. partly that can stop us from doing a lot of harm. It can help us do good, even though we never know what the results will be. I mean, this time we not only were seeing political changes, well, worse than that. I will stop so I don't rant. But we're also seeing environmental collapse. And I know people who say, it can't be done, we're going to, planetary hospice is the term. Let's see what we can do to be the most kind towards the most people in the time we have left. And I'm not ready to go there because I'm not ready to say nothing can happen. I just can't promise that something will happen. And so I wrote Open Reality. It was totally a struggle to figure out that, but that's it. We do not know. We know that there's cause and effect, and we do not know what the results will be. So, one more? Yes.
Thank you. First, I think I have a completely different take on this. If you think about Buddha, we are talking about Buddha, Bodhisattva, and everything. When Buddha was alive, there was a lot of political turmoil at that point.
Oops, say again.
There was a lot of political turmoil at the time as well. There was smaller kingdom, they were fighting with each other for very small pieces.
Oh, yes, yes.
Isn't it?
The fights among the small communities
Yes.
in Buddhist time.
It was very strong, but Buddha didn't run any protest. He didn't create any political party. He himself was a prince. If he wanted, he could have become the king and rule the whole land. Like, he just go on fighting with other kingdoms and just keep on winning, but he didn't choose to do that.
Okay, so let me say that back because of whoever's, I don't see that's listening, that Buddha did not use his power as a prince to win the wars, and he did not join protests.
Yes.
And then I'm going to say, there was that one time that he went and sat under a tree, and you're going there?
Yeah.
Good, okay.
The reason I think he didn't go for the fight against the system, because I think when you try to fight against the system, you become part of the system.
Yeah, not
It's
becoming
not
part of the
just-
system by fighting,
You know,
yeah.
because there's already a system and you're fighting for it, so you're creating a resistance. And when the resistance got big enough, that resistance became its own system and completely swallowed the old system.
Yes, so not to become a new version of the old system because you fight it.
Yeah.
And that is, I look at my friends who don't talk to me anymore. Well, sometimes they talk to me, but it's like we're in different worlds now. And they don't agree with us, you know. I think Buddha was looking at something bigger, and he was looking at the long term.
That's what I'm saying, like, Buddha didn't fight with the system because he didn't want to create a new system. We don't need, I mean, like, it could be controversial, and I'm saying it, but we don't need a people who are ready to resist the existing system. Because if you think about it, if you think Gandhi or Martin Luther and all these people, they resisted something because there was something wrong with the system. And they created a new system, but that system is not perfect because all of humans are not perfect. We humans cannot make a perfect system.
Okay.
So
So there's,
objective shouldn't be to create any kind of system. I don't think we need to look for what Saranam Gandhi is doing or what Martin Luther King has done before. I think we should look at the word turmoil or word chaos is nothing but a manifestation of human or our internal friction or insecurity.
So, okay, wait. So rather than looking at political figures, some of whom I mentioned, we should look at, say that again.
I'm saying that word chaos or word, our chaos you're looking right now is nothing but a representation or the manifestation of our own internal friction or insecurities. If our individually will work on it in their own securities, insecurities and frictions, then there's nothing to fight about. And that's what I think what Buddha was trying to do. Through Zen meditation or any other form of meditation, what we are doing, we are trying to resolve our internal conflict. And then those are on acting.
Okay, so let's see, how are we, ooh, I'm supposed to stop.
That's okay, that's all right. I don't think no way wrong.
Thank you.
Time's up.
This is a whole new conversation. So I was asked to stop at this time, so I had one more thing to read, but I will just let it go and we can converse during tea.